was at the time, and here they're getting booked in. That's their booking photo, and so I don't know, but it was always kind of funny to see what was being brought in. But different times.
I wanted to ask you this about it's different. It's federal, or I guess federal, or it must have been a federal prison in West Virginia. But Whitey Bulger, Whitey Bulger, and we're finding out, the notorious mob boss. And I'm sorry, I'm not shedding a tear on this, even though it sounded like he lived violently, he died violently. Initially, there was the report, as you've likely heard, that this mob boss was behind bars serving, a life sentence, 2 life sentences. Sentenced though back in 2013. He's 89 years old. He had been on the lam for just an amazing life, horrible life, if you ask me. But anyway, he was found dead, and the initial calls yesterday when we heard he had died is that he was found unresponsive, and paramedics were sent because of a cardiac arrest. Well, we've since found that the FBI's investigating. It appears as though he was beaten to death by other inmates, including a former mob hitman who was behind bars, and there's video of the 2 of them going in. I've heard, among other things, his eyes were basically gouged out, and some other things. He was beaten to death in a cell. And I'm just curious, as you saw that, obviously a high-profile inmate. What would you imagine? These 2 that went after him. He's 89 years old. This is an old man.
I mean, that's almost a 90-year-old man.
Old man, and they go in there and kill him. And would that have been inmates maybe trying to make a name for themselves? Or would this have been something certainly that should have been prevented by the prison staff there? I mean, come on. You have a high-profile guy and these others bad dudes, and they go in there. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll tell you the other one was Jeffrey Dahmer. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, here I think there's 2 things to think about when you have it inside. One of them is sometimes the inmates are in fear of this person because of, I believe the Dahmer case was more that way, where they believe this guy may be strange or weird enough to do harm to me, so therefore there's acting out on him in that case. I believe in these situations, clearly with all he is tied to and all the issues that are going on, it was a retaliation of something.
You
in
think
the
someone
streets.
from the outside ordered it? Because they remembered that he was a snitch and he's 89 and he's there, but they said, look, before he dies of natural causes, let's send a message and go after him.
That's and I don't have any knowledge.
We don't know. The FBI is still looking into it.
The weird part for me, as you ask, should they have known, whatever, the moves that he made from Oklahoma to West Virginia.
He just moved, too.
That day, Monday or Tuesday. I mean, so that's peculiar to me as to why was the move made. It could have been just a reclassification, which happens all the time. But it's a pretty quick, once he lands there, what happened to him happened pretty quickly. And I don't think the inmates would not have known he's coming to their facility. They just don't communicate that
quickly,
right? Right.
Yeah.
So that's a little strange, but it sounds like to me, and again, maybe it's a pact they had from the beginning. If we ever come in contact with him inside, here's what we do. And I don't know who did it, who will be charged or whatever, but the reality is a lot of those guys are facing life already. So there's not, in that world.
Now 2 of these guys, they'll be known for the ones that took out Whitey Bulger, and you've seen there are plenty of folks who, were hurt by him, who are popping champagne. And again, a brutal beating of an 89-year-old. I shed no tears for Whitey Bulger, but something like this should not happen behind bars.
Right, an 89-year-old man. I mean, I keep saying that. I mean, it's hard to live to 89 living a healthy life.
Right, and he was still plugging up. But you make a great point, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm just curious as what it is about how this happened, because he just moved from the Oklahoma prison to the West Virginia. Why was he moved? And then how was it these inmates at the new facility were able to know that it's him within 2 days and then go in and have access to take him out?
Right.
Because you have high-profile inmates in the Davidson County Jail. In fact, we now know Travis Ranking is back with you. I know there's a gag order, so I'm not going to ask you to go into details, but we know he was at Middle Tennessee Mental Health. Story came out that they've deemed him fit now to move forward in the process. So he comes back to you, right?
Right.
And he's not in general pop like a lot of high pop.
Right. And so a couple things people have to remember. There's TV inside every prison and jail in the country, and so now Whitey Bulger would not have been on TV being moved. That's not the case. But in our situation, especially with Ranking or any others, when a person's being moved back, it's a very public event, or if they get arrested tonight for some very high-profile case, the inmate population is very aware of what's going on, and so they will watch and they will know and they would see what's happening. So it's hard to keep that away from the public, the knowledge of the population. In federal prison, they don't communicate that. No one knows he's moving from Oklahoma, so that's the part that surprises me about what happened. But yeah, we're challenged by keeping the inmates safe from him, him safe from the other inmates.
Sure.
There's a lot of challenges in that, and you just never know. I mean, let's take the Rankin case. There's no secret. There's multiple victims in that case, and somebody who was involved at the Waffle House could easily come to jail. Some victim's family member for some reason, whatever that is, and our challenge is we don't know that.
Right.
And so if they were to cross paths, we have a lot of responsibility to make sure that he's held until his court date and so forth, and so you don't want anything to happen. And it's not easy, and it's really not easy when you're talking about drug dealing, gang members who have all sorts of enemies they don't even know. I remember years ago I was interviewing an inmate back in my old days, and you ask a bunch of questions. Do you have any enemies or incompatibles? Who can you not be housed with? And I will never forget, the guy started, I got a bunch of them. I got a bunch of them. I said, well, what do you mean? Well, I can't be with 12 toes or 2 fingers. Or, he had all these nicknames. Well,
who are they?
I have no idea who I'm keeping away from. Yeah, I can't stop that. And he, but a lot of the drug dealing world and gang world is conflicted by, they don't know who their enemies are.
Yeah, that's your job, to make sure then you have to protect them until they go to court. Listen, we got to take a break on that note. When we come back, we got some calls coming in for you. If you have a question for the sheriff on This Morning, give us a call, 737-7587. It is, again, a spooky edition of Halloween Morning Line. We'll be right back.
When it comes to Medicare, you shouldn't have to figure it out alone. With Cigna Health Spring, you won't have to. We'll help you find the Medicare Advantage plan that's right for you. Call 1-855-707-7180. There's no obligation. At Cigna Health Spring, we offer plans with no monthly premiums and no primary doctor copays, so you pay less. And we offer medical, prescription drugs, even dental, all in one plan. So you get everything you need to feel secure. You can even see an in-network specialist without a referral. Plus, once you enroll, our team will be there to guide you toward better health. Medicare annual enrollment is here. Call Cigna Health Spring today and let us help you find the Medicare Advantage plan that's right for you. There's no obligation. Call 1-855-707-7180. That's 1-855-707-7180. Cigna Health Spring. Together, all the way.
Whether a house is new or whether a house is 20 years old, we can go in and we can find debris in the lines. Mr. B's is about doing duct cleaning the best that we can do it, and better than anybody else in the industry. That's what I personally stand behind and guarantee. We never make a claim that we're going to help your health. That's just something we don't do. But again, I personally believe that if I put you in a cleaner environment, it's got to have a positive impact on you. And we literally cut a hole into the main trunk line. That's the main artery, just like a tree trunk. And we attach a HEPA vacuum system to it.
All right.
When we do that and turn it on, it causes a negative airflow. As that machine's sucking everything backwards, we go to each line and we'll brush it, and then we air sweep it down to the trunk line. So we've taken everything back to that negative airflow. So again, whether it's upstairs or downstairs, you saw that everything is being brushed and air swept to the trunk line, not bringing it back into your breathing atmosphere. What makes my home need an air duct cleaning? You have to make that decision. It's your environment. And so if you have black lines at the edge of your carpets, or you have any sort of dust, excess dust in your home that you're dealing with, and that's a problem for you, then you definitely would want your air ducts cleaned. But most people understand too that if they'll just look down the return, take the filter out a little bit and look down the return, they'll see all the dust that they're breathing on an everyday basis. The way we do the cleaning, most residential homes will be good for 5 to 7 years. We do recommend that you have your system serviced by a licensed contractor and also use a good filter. We've been doing this for over 17 years now. We take pride in the fact that we have an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau. Also the fact that we don't believe that anybody's going to out-clean us. And as I've said before, people can outprice me, but they're not going to out-clean me. There's only one way, and that's the right way, and that's what we do at Mr. B's Air Duct Cleaning.
Back on Morning Line, happy Halloween. Scary guy sitting here next to me, dressed as a sheriff, as Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall. It's good to have him on this Halloween. Thanks for joining us. 737-7587 if you have a question for the sheriff. And as always, we have to start the program with his friend and mine, Joe. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
I was fine, Nick and Sheriff.
Good morning, Joe.
Just, good morning, Sheriff. Man, I hope you're the best sheriff. I've been around a long time. Seen a lot of them come and go. I remember Robert Kirshner very well.
Yeah.
But I want you to stay the sheriff as long as you want to be, you know, as long as you want to be a sheriff.
Well, I appreciate that.
You know, this thing that happened to Whitey Bulger, I will disagree with the sheriff a little bit on this. These prisons and certain prisons, even federal prisons, they know when somebody's coming a lot of times before they ever get there. They know their background. Whitey Bulger's big mistake was he was working with the FBI, and the FBI guy that he was working with, he grew up with, so they were friends. And they had him on the FBI payroll, plus he was still working the other side of the fence, doing some killings and things. So the one thing that mafia-type people have that they hate the most is a rat, somebody that will tell on you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so he got a bad rap, you know, from that. So this could be one of two things. It could be somebody that he did something to in the past, or it could have been just sending a message to anybody. Don't be telling stuff about what you're doing or what you know. But I'll tell you a little quick story right quick. To go to show you, this has been several years ago, and you know the case very well. I won't even get into who and what it was, but this guy got involved with the mafia a little bit, and they got him for jury tampering, and he went to Joliet, Illinois. And I knew this guy very well, and he told me he hadn't more got there real good, and the warden talked to him, and he had back trouble, so he gave him a job down on the dock, watching the other prisoners unload trucks. All he did was the paperwork. But he said as soon as he got up to the prisoners, said just guy, great big guy, noted being the toughest guy in the Joliet at the time, shook his hand and told him, said, Mr. So-and-so, said, look, son, I know who you are, what you did, know what kind of guy you are. Said you probably shouldn't even be here. But said if anybody bothers you or you need anything done, you just talk to me about it. Said I'll take care of it. And said the reason why is I'm not going to leave here alive. I'm going to leave here dead anyway. So it doesn't make any difference to me if I have to take care of somebody else right here.
That's
so
right.
that's the way it goes. So they got pretty good information.
Yep.
And you got as good as well here. You got some state prisons that's you know, give very little trouble, and you got some state prisons that give trouble all the time.
Yep.
So you got federal prisons the same way. I would say that the prison he was in Oklahoma, he was pretty well safe because he'd been there for quite a while.
Yep.
But I would say in the West Virginia prison, this ain't the first time this has happened in the West Virginia federal prison.
Yep.
Well, you wonder sometimes, and thanks, Joe. Just how much comes into this investigation. They're going to look into it. They have to. Could this have been arranged somehow?
Right.
Could there have been someone that's on the inside helping to facilitate this, you know?
Yeah, and Joe's right. He's right on always. And there's so many variations. I do believe, this is just an outsider, I believe it was done either at the ask of someone from the outside or, you know, a lot of these folks, you know, were sent to prison over information given by someone else. I may be doing life sentence over something you snitched me out for.
That's what I was wondering. They were saying one of the people that went into cell was a mafia hitman that's serving time. Now, did he have anything to do with why, you know, did Bulger put him there?
Right.
And if that's the case, well, they should have been aware and said, like you said, if there's someone that's there that he has an association with one way or another, and you have to watch for this with high-profile inmates, you got to be aware of that, or at least keep them separate.
Yeah, and they would have asked him. They would have asked Bulger himself, what are your enemies in the system? Now, granted, you know, you can only protect him from who he tells you, but you would assume that he would know. Let's just say there were certain people. So, or it could have been a total, like I said, like Joe even referenced, it could be someone from the outside working to have someone take him out from the outside who, you know, who he felt like he betrayed him on. And it's you know, there's a culture inside the institutions. There just is, where, you know, there's a set of rules and laws that are a little different than what you and I may be used to, and But it's a challenge to keep people safe. I mean, you know, there's a lot of issues that are wrapped in these cases a lot of times, and it's a challenge to. I won't ever forget. Long time ago, I was working in classification where we would book people and then we would assign you where to live. And so anyway, you came in, and so we score you out on this instrument we had, and you're a 7, you're going to be a medium custody, so we moved you to a certain floor, and that was my job. And so anyway, earlier in the day, or after that, I get back then we didn't have fancy things like we have now. I have a note written from a judge sent over to the jail that said, if Billy Jim Jones comes in, be sure to keep him away from Nick Barris. Well, there's no way for me to know that Billy Jim Jones, I don't have a system to say, tell me when he comes in. So time goes, and Billy Jim Jones comes in the next morning. And I wasn't on shift anymore, and so they put Billy Jim Jones with Nick Barris, and Nick Barris's face was the color of your shirt by the time he had to go to court the next day. And it was a drug deal where drug case where both were going to be testifying against each other, and but the system wasn't able to. I couldn't know when or if it ever was going to happen. We didn't have a system that would alert people. So
now you would have an alert, right? I mean, so that's one of the advantages of technology.
We can flag it, as we call it, that to not, you know. But one of the things that some of it's on the person, though. I mean, this was a judge telling me that really the individual should say, you need to keep me away from Nick Barris, because that's where all the information is collected. I'm not saying a judge wasn't truthful or honest, but it's on the individual to tell us who are your enemies. And back then we had to write all that on sheets of paper. Right. Today you put it in a system and you would try to, you know, obviously code it where you would never put them together. But it's you know, it's a different world, and again, you know, you and I may have enemies in our life or neighbors who are mad at us or whatever, but this is a little different. This is life or death sometimes, and they're, you know, they're in jail or prison or may face life because of what you've said about them, and so there's a lot of pent up resentment, you know.
No kidding. All right, let's take a call from Ann. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning.
Hey there.
Last month I asked Daron Hall, Sheriff Hall, a question about community oversight board, and I respected his opinion on it. And so over the last month, I've spent a lot of time educating people in the community on what a community oversight board could or couldn't do. And in that process, I've sought out employees of the Sheriff's Department, specifically those that served warrants, because I felt that the climate affected those individuals that did that job. And I was interested in how they felt. And not surprisingly, they felt that the climate of today would be calmed with a civilian or a community oversight board, and those individuals felt they were in agreement with Amendment 1. And in that aspect, I would like to know how Sheriff Hall feels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great issue. You've been asked this a lot.
We'll let you answer this, and then we'll go to the break. But go ahead and answer it.
Yeah, a lot of issues about it. I've been asked this several times. I think I said last time, I personally am not in favor of the amendment the way it's written.
Again, should we make it clear, though, that this oversight board will really not have much of an impact on you at all? This is really directly something that will be looking at the police department, not you.
Yeah.
But you're in law enforcement, so you're saying, and I guess, has the chief said one way or the other? I don't know that he has. I'm not sure, but I know that the Fraternal Order of Police is against it.
Right.
So your take, you don't like the idea of it. And again, voters are going to vote on it on November 6th, but go ahead.
Yeah, and let me be real clear, let me qualify this. I don't want to be around if this happens. This isn't about Daron, what I'm about to say. It's not about today, but my opinion is that if you're going to alter the charter that was written over 50 years ago, amend the charter to fix this issue of accountability in law enforcement, I think what you would do is you would roll the police department under the sheriff's office. It's a pretty simple situation. The state law requires that you elect a sheriff in every county. You have to. You can't change that. So you have to elect what is the chief law enforcement officer of every county. That's a requirement. There's no requirement to have a chief of police. Now, I'm not saying we don't have a good one. I'm not saying that it would change certain things. Here's the difference. There is accountability for this job. If you don't believe me, drive down the road with me. People tell me I drive too fast, I pay your salary, I elected you, I voted for you, I won't vote for you. I mean, it's a daily reminder of your life. I'm not saying Chief Anderson doesn't have some accountability, but what the voters and what the people are demanding is accountability by the public. Well, that's the best accountability you can have, to me.
You get elected, they don't like you, they vote yeah.
Right, and we elect our DA, who has more authority than the chief of police or the sheriff or the mayor or the media. I mean, that's the most powerful position in the county, and you elect that person because it has accountability to the public. This job has accountability to the public. Now, the difference is the police department, as we all know, is a complicated set of issues that we're all talking about, shootings and body cameras and all that. I don't like the fact that the person who's in that job has to be worked through and is appointed by a mayor. I'm not against the mayor. It doesn't matter which mayor we're talking about. The point is, I don't think the public feel that they can hold the police chief accountable for what they want through a person who appointed them, who may have a totally different philosophy about law enforcement than the chief himself. And so most systems that have gone metro do it differently than we do. Some make the chief of police work underneath the sheriff. Some make, they break it in different places.
They don't make it so the chief is elected, do they?
Yes, there are places
they
who...
could elected. All right, but what you would maybe say is it could evolve someday where you would be the
Yeah, and I don't want to, don't miss it. This is not Daron.
And
I don't want to be here to do
that. That's not going to happen anytime soon. It's not being suggested, but you've seen that elsewhere. Like
yes, that. And I think there's even places in Denver, I believe, where they went to kind of a metro like we have, where the sheriff was taken out of what you would call direct street enforcement. And there's a lot of conversation. I've read some articles out there lately where the same thing is at question. The demand for accountability for what is an appointed police department, they're missing the accountability of the public. I don't think elections get it right all the time. I'm watching elections like everybody else. But I don't like that what we're doing here is going in and now putting an oversight board, which may be a good idea, may not. I'm not real interested in that part. What I do feel is that the public do not feel like they have accountability of the appointed chief of police, and therefore what happens is that is an appointment through a mayor who may have a totally different philosophy about how to operate the city. And to get your police chief addressed, you have to vote for a mayor, hope they appoint the person that you believe that you agree with, and then they apply the law the way you want them to.
And that's why this is going to the referendum, is that people are hungry to think that they have some control over this because they don't under the system you're saying. Look, we got to take a break on that note. It's interesting. We'll see how that vote works out. We'll be back with more of your phone calls, more of our conversation on this Halloween with the sheriff.
This is a Storm 5 weather update. For weather on the go, download the Storm Shield app.
Hi everyone, I'm News Channel 5 meteorologist Leland Statham. So on radar for today, some spotty showers ahead of the main line. The main line doesn't come in until during the afternoon, but ahead of that this morning and early afternoon, look for some hit or miss showers to develop. So there's a look at radar for you now and the check of temps. Ahead of this system, it's going to be another mild day. We hit 77 yesterday. We'll be in the mid-upper 70s again today. Check out what's happening right now from Nashville International. Your forecast on this Wednesday, Halloween. Look for temperatures in the mid-upper 70s today. Rain chances picking up this afternoon and tonight. Now, there are scattered showers for the early part of tonight. West-northwest, you could get some heavy rain during prime-time trick-or-treating. But the best threat for overall heavy rain will come in late tonight into early Thursday.
Your safety is what drives the Storm 5 weather team. Now, Storm 5 is tracking storms in overdrive.
We are tracking rain right now from your neighborhood.
Storm 5 Titan, only on News Channel 5. Sponsored by Nissan.
Dreaming of a gorgeous new kitchen or bathroom? Granite Transformations can make your dreams a reality. We'll install high-quality quartz, glass, and stone countertops, tub and shower surrounds, mosaic tile backsplashes, and cabinets. With our revolutionary resurfacing process, we can complete your transformation in as little as 1 day. So act now and go from this to this. Call the number on your screen and get $1,000 off your kitchen or bath remodel. Granite Transformations. Done in a day. Beautiful for life.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
Why do you ask that, kiddo?
We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday Halloween. Our guest with us this morning is Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall. Good to have you on.
Happy to be here.
I don't know if you saw this. Well, I think since you last were on, there was, and again, this can happen anywhere. I'm not asking you to be critical of anyone, but there was an escape at the Rutherford County Jail. I don't know if you recall, there was a situation where there was an inmate on one of the upper floors, or a couple of inmates. They kind of, I think, somehow got out of the cell and attacked a female. This was on the night shift guard, and were able then to make it out. And in retrospect, the two of them were caught. No one was seriously injured, even though I think that inmate was roughed up. But one of the correctional officers in Central, or whatever that is, the ones that control the electronic buttons and to open, was reprimanded after the fact and put on paid leave because these guys got out because they were up here, but they had to get through all these doors. And she literally, because of the call, started hitting the buttons, is the way I understand it, opening the doors down to where these two guys literally just walked out of back loading dock and disappeared. They didn't jump any razor wire or anything like that. They literally walked out, and my thinking is maybe she was fearful, and folks were trying to rush to the aid of the officer who was being attacked, and so she was opening the doors. Well, that just opened the way for these guys to walk out, and the protocol of it, and you know, I think the sheriff does a good job there. I'm sure he was looking at what happened. He held this person responsible, but something like that, and I'm just wondering, I mean, was it a panic? Was it, you know, that these guys literally were able to walk out through several locked doors because she kept opening? And my understanding too is these guys knew enough to punch the button, you know, to ask for it to be open, and she may have thought, for all we know, if she couldn't see him on video, that it was the guard punching the button. Right. So she opens them, and they walk right out of back loading dock. Bloop. No, easy as pie. Easy as pie. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, and I don't know all the details, so let me.
Right, again, and this happens sometimes. And again, no one was hurt. They've been caught, and they're looking into how it happened and addressing it with this officer who did not lose her job, but was reprimanded. And I understand people make mistakes, so it just is a mistake. These things happen. Policy wasn't followed. What is the policy if someone's being attacked and they need help up there, but you know inmates are loose?
Yeah,
what do you do?
You cannot let the door open to let an inmate out. Regardless, this has been a conversation for many years, and you're sitting around. I can remember having this conversation, you know, how hard it would be to sit there and not open the door, and it's one of those, you know, it's the same thing as in the streets. You have someone with a gun to someone's head. If you don't give me your, you know, your keys and your house and your car and your wife and your kids, I'm going to kill this person. And the truth is, you're not supposed to give them everything. I mean, the fact is, you can't do that. But how hard it would be to be sitting there and having to make a choice over whether, if I hit this button, that person's going to get out. If I don't, they're going to harm him more. And so but the rule of policy is that you can't do that. You can't authorize or allow someone to go. I don't know whether she knew or could see them. Right. Most systems like that have cameras and buzzers, so that you never. I would not want a buzzer system that didn't let me know who I was letting in, unless there's a radio system.
You think you imagine maybe someone could panic in that situation? Right. I think she meant well and was worried about this officer being attacked, but it backfired. Right. That's just my take. Because if she was involved in any other way, or really, I think she would have lost her job. But I think she meant well and was very concerned about the safety of this officer, and just didn't follow policy, which I guess would have been something more structured to get up there.
You can't let them out. You're calling for backup, and you're waiting on someone to come respond, but you can't let them go.
Yeah, meaning that if you have to open the doors, you know someone, maybe armed guards, are waiting. So if those guys are there, hey guys, we're here. If you don't do it until you're sure people are in place.
Yeah, and again, I'm going on what you're telling me. I read the story. I was happy to see, I mean, again, that the sheriff's office held someone accountable if they were wrong. It's a terrible situation. You know, a lot of times I tell people this, a lot of times when there's an escape, there is a relationship that's formed between an officer or an employee and an inmate that goes too far. There's a trust element that develops, and they shouldn't, and all that. Yeah. That doesn't sound like what happened here at all. It sounds like a mistake, because I believe the sheriff's office would have gotten rid of the officer if it was intentional. But you know, I'll tell you a good thing to think about. Reminds me of this. Years and years ago, over here, a good friend of mine was working in what we call transportation. He was moving several inmates to and from court. The old Sally port, the old garage doors hardly ever worked, so they were up. So basically, you could just walk out if you were free. Well, in this case, there was 3 inmates on what we would call a chain, but then three inmates, and one of them had jimmied the lock, and so as soon as they got between the building and the van, the one inmate broke loose and took off running. Now, you're the officer.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Go after him.
What are you going to do with the two that you...
Oh, I guess I would radio it. Right.
But you would probably do what you said.
Okay.
Which is what instinctively we think.
I guess,
there he goes.
That's why I say there's the instinct, and I understand. I guess that's where I'm not trained. Maybe training kicks in, but
it is
your impulse is like, wait.
Because I can't just let him go, and there's all that going on, and you got these two and that one, and all. So it's but we've commented, and again, back in those days, we didn't have very good training either. So it's a long time ago, but it's a reminder of, you have this responsibility to take care of. You see someone getting hurt, but letting that door go may harm everybody in the community and more. You can't do that. You got to get response. It's just a lot happening. That's
why there's got to be training, and it's impulse, and we are all human, and sometimes you just want to help someone. Listen, we'll take a quick break on that note, and we come back. More of your phone calls right after this.
If you spend any amount of time at the great outdoors, hunting or fishing, you need to watch Southern Woods and Waters on News Channel 5+. Join host Hugh McNaughton and our area's top sportsmen as they share their experience and knowledge. Southern Woods and Waters is all about Middle Tennessee, and it's live. Call in with your questions. Whatever the season, that's what they're talking about. Tune in to Southern Woods and Waters Thursday night at 8, or catch the encore presentation Sunday night at 8 on News Channel 5+.
My first job, Assistant Federal District Attorney, taught me what to do and not to do in the courtroom. Then I left the Department of Justice to become Tennessee Assistant Attorney General. For the last 40 years, I've gotten injured people the money they need from insurance companies.
If you've been injured in an accident, call Bart Durham Injury Law at 1-800-844-1712.
I'm Bart Durham, a personal injury lawyer, and I'd be proud to be your lawyer.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're back on Morning Line. Our guest is Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall, and we had a few people calling and just curious about the treatment of high-profile inmates, as we said earlier. It's interesting because your jail currently houses two mass shooting suspects. Now, the understanding is after we learned that Travis Ranking, they finished with him at Middle Tennessee Mental Health. So what did that mean for him?
Yeah, so there's several phases of the mental health thing. The part that he went through originally was to see if he was competent to stand trial. Okay, and that's one. And so if the answer to that is that he's incompetent to stand trial, then he would stay there forever. But they do a reevaluation of his status, meaning when he first came in and all this was happening, was he competent at that time? The answer was no by the mental health staff. At some point, and I don't know how regular, but at some point that evaluation reoccurs, and they determine, has he settled to a point where he can now stand trial? My understanding is that's what happened, a week or so ago. He moved back to us. And that's what will happen. He will stay here awaiting trial just like every other person. Now, my understanding and the way I see this is there's a whole other evaluation to determine, was he fit, or did he know what he was doing on the night of? Because it's a different situation. That's kind of whether he's guilty or innocent because he's insane. That's different. That's what people talk about. The other part was, is he competent enough to go through the trial? So at first that was no, it's now yes. But the whole issue of whether he was insane at the time that this event occurred, therefore he shouldn't be found guilty, is a whole nother issue.
That would be his defense. And so again, he's in a special, separate area, not with any of the other inmates. Same thing, another one, Emmanuel Sampson. To your knowledge, has he had a mental evaluation? Was one requested? And so he is considered, at least as you sit here now, competent to stand trial?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it would have happened before now, whether he could stand trial or not, because the whole role of getting the trial ready and all that's underway. That's been, you know, and that would have happened earlier. If the issue was going to be competency for trial purposes, that should have been handled a month or two into his booking, which is now, you can help me, back over a year ago. I saw the anniversary the other day. So, so the point is that will have happened already. Now, I'm not saying in trial they won't argue he was insane at the time of the event, but his competency should have been established. He's been with us the whole time. He would go back and forth to Middle Tennessee Mental Health for some of those evaluations. That's very common, but he's lived with us the whole time, as would anyone in Ranking's case or whatever. And so, yeah, they would be in what we call restrictive housing. It's restricted to 22 hours a day in your cell. There's 2 hours a day where you would be out. Basically can make phone calls to family and so forth, shower, and do your what we call rec. They're wrecked alone, and that's just kind of to prevent things we were talking about earlier. But yeah, they're very. There's others. We have some other high-profile cases. We transferred recently the Wiggins person who were holding for Davidson County, who was in that same area. We have 2 or 3 others, you know, gosh, significant profile cases.
But Sampson and Ranking would never really come into contact with each other.
No.
But they may be in the same section, but alone.
Right, and let me say this: they could have conversation. They shouldn't have contact. And conversation, as in, because these are doors and they're in a in a rec area, they could communicate if they wanted to through metal doors. Remember Perry March, he was screaming through a door to another inmate about what all was going on, because they were both in the same type of housing unit back then. What was the guy's name? The question mark guy?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's going to hit me. You just, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was the one who.
Do you monitor for that in any of these cases? If something like this comes along where there's inmates that maybe have something to say, having talked to either of these guys?
Yes, I mean, I'm not speaking for these cases, but we've worked with the DA's office and FBI and other investigators where we receive information or we know that there's some conversation, and if you know, if the individual's willing to work, you know, with authorities, and then that's how it works.
But you're not saying that's happened in this case, but if it did, that would
sure. And I mean, I've said this all a long time, but the detective work gets all the credit. They should. The prosecutors get credit. They should. But what people don't really think about is most of the significant cases that you've ever been a part of. The Marsha Trimble case, one of the lead people. The Perry March case. It's communication and conversation in jails and prisons that a lot of times lead to directly being able to pinpoint what happened. So we want to cooperate and help.
Nathan Ferris.
There you go. Good for you.
Nathan Ferris was. I remember that. He was the key player in the Perry March trial. All right, let's get to some phone calls, Sheriff. We'll go to Wayne. Good morning, Wayne. What's on your mind? Hi, Wayne.
Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
Yeah, the question I want to ask, when you had the old CJC, you also had Blackwood and you had
CWC.
The work programs on Harding Place.
Yeah.
Now, the work program is very structured and disciplined. Blackwood is free-for-all, and the CJC basically had the felons and, you know, categories. My question is, when somebody is sentenced to go to jail, how do they determine where they're confined? And I know they have a 23-hour solitary lockdown. What does a person do to deserve 23-hour lockdown solitary?
Great. Well, Wayne's really good. He's got the names, even the nicknames, the slang, and everything. Yeah, he's right on. Let me say, what Wayne's talking about, though, was really in normal times. And what I mean by that is back when we had the CJC and what we call HDC or Blackwood and the Harding Place, back when we had all that running at the same time, he was right. But if you don't know, the city council made a really bad decision to move our facilities back downtown. We tried to move everything to Harding. When they did that, we had to tear down what was the CJC and temporarily house people in places they shouldn't be until we can get this thing built. So right now everything is a mess as it relates to his idea. But to put it in perspective, the CJC was the most significant high-profile cases. Our new downtown detention center that's replacing it will be that same thing. It'll be where the 700 most high-profile cases are housed. We will not have a Blackwoods or a Hill Detention Center anymore. It's going away, be torn down. And so the downtown facility and our Harding Place will be the only 2 sites that we will have. Very high profile, high risk people downtown, everybody else on the Harding campus. If you want to think of it this way, they're low, medium, and high level of people. The highs will be downtown. town. The mediums and lows will be on Harding. He asked about 23-hour lockdown. It's really 22 nowadays. We do a 22 lockdown and the 2 hours out. He asked who all is locked down. A really good question, by the way. Those people who are in what we call restrictive housing. In the old days, they call that maximum custody, but we just restrictive housing. You could be there because you have a disciplinary, you're acting out in the cells, you're acting out in jail. That could put you in restrictive housing. Your charges, such as Reinking or Sampson, could put you in restrictive housing because of the significant nature. Other people are in fear for their life and others, so therefore they're in restrictive because they want to be. So there's a lot of different types of cases that end up in what we call restrictive. There are some punitive because they're acting out. There are some by choice and some by the level of their charges.
Gotcha. Let's go to Betty next. Betty, good morning. Hi, Betty. Are you there, Betty? Hello, Betty. She was on hold for a while. See if I can come back to her. We'll go to Pat. Hello, Pat. How are you, Pat?
Oh, doing pretty good.
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, today sets the anniversary of about 28 years ago. I visited the sheriff's fine establishment. Went well. Got out a day later. Just say, don't get out there and party too much.
So you were locked up for a while, huh? All right.
I had a night. I was wondering, why does the sheriff's department do the bulk item pickup stuff? It's not an inmate out there. I've seen them. They're in sheriff's uniform, and I just don't know what.
That's a great question.
Way budgets work nowadays. Why you guys are involved in that, and it's not something with Public Works.
That's a great question.
Bulk pickup. What kind of things are we talking about? I think I know what he's saying.
Yeah, so you have a washer or dryer and it's in your house. You can literally move it to the curb and call. And historically, years ago, you would call Public Works. We have a system that we would use inmate labor to go pick up brush, and we would go pick up bulk item and illegal dumping and all that. And so we met with Public Works years ago. Budget cuts were happening over there. Their ability to get to that was really being restricted. And so we agreed to take over bulk item, but I think Pat's question's a good one. We have struggled over the years between what to use inmate labor for and what not. For example, we've got a lot of equipment and we've got inmates that can contribute to that, and they cut grass, do a lot of painting, do a lot of manual work. But there's equipment nowadays where it actually goes out and it's a truck. We call it a knuckle boom. It picks up the equipment and puts it and hauls it away. It doesn't need a lot of manual labor, and so we've evolved into that. We took over bulk item pickup because Public Works was no longer able to do it budget-wise.
Where does the public call? Do they call the sheriff's department now, or do they call Public Works and they say, no, we'll transfer you?
Great call.
Because I think the average Joe probably thinks, I know there's a service for this, I'm calling Public Works. I don't think they think to call the sheriff. At least I wouldn't.
Great question. You call the call center for Metro Government, and then they divert it to us. Good question. No, that was an agreement back then. But Pat's right. I mean, today we're less expensive than Public Works for several reasons. But when we started, we had inmate labor doing all sorts of things with technology of equipment. And he's right. Sometimes you'll just see the officer there pulling up to do it. But we have inmates working all over town doing other functions as well, and it's just kind of sharing that duty. And one of these days it's probably worth revisiting and saying who does and who should be doing that. But I think we're pretty effective at it. It goes back to something that we were talking about earlier. The public will demand accountability from us. I'm not saying Public Works doesn't do a good job, but there's a lot of friction back then because Public Works has all sorts of responsibilities to take care of in the city. And I think we were committed to being responsive to the public and getting this stuff picked up, and so it's worked pretty well over those years.
Yeah, you guys have been out there whenever there's been major disasters. I can think going back to the tornado that tore through Nashville, or gosh, those floods, and the sheriff's department was out there early on. I remember the deputies monitoring as the inmates were putting sandbags right down there in Riverfront Park. Right. So you guys are very involved when it's something really big too. Let's go back. I think we have Betty back now on line 3. Hi, Betty. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
I have a quick question for the sheriff.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about combining the sheriff's department and Metro Police Department together?
No,
the sheriff running it.
You know,
okay. Now we touched on it earlier, so she may have just joined us.
And Betty, right? Betty, I want to be careful. Please don't go tell everybody that Daron wants to do this, because I don't want to make it about me. To be honest with you, I think that's where we ought to end up one day. It was ironic I ran for sheriff this time, and when I was meeting with the FOP board for your interview, you interview any candidate, and of course both people running meet with them. And one of the questions the FOP board asked me at the time was, would I be willing to take over the police department? And I said, that's not why I'm running for sheriff. If the city decided to do that, I believe it could run. I believe it would be a very wise thing to do down the road. I don't want to make that about something I'm anxious or wanting to do. I have buildings we're trying to build and get the agency, but I do think it's a better plan than trying to institute something called an oversight board that's really about putting accountability.
How would that really change, though, Sheriff? If they came underneath you, you're an elected official, okay? And so you technically, or whoever the sheriff is, would be over the police department, working with the chief there. As it stands now, instead of you, it's an elected mayor who basically is the chief's boss. So now I know you have more of a law enforcement background than a mayor would be. Is that the main difference? Because, I mean, how would it be such a big difference if you as an elected official are over the police department as opposed to the elected mayor?
Yeah, so let's say, just to make a conversation, let's say that I was against body cameras.
Okay.
I'm running the organization. I don't believe we need body cameras, and you believe we do. You can hold me directly accountable for that. This whole thing we've been through with body cameras for the last, if people go back and look at this, Mayor Barry, before we ever had the first shooting that led to this, went public about wanting to put body cameras on police officers. That was never even discussed with the city council or the mayor or the police chief. That wasn't even an issue. And the point of that is the person who runs that organization of wanting body cameras or discipline, right? I mean, if you believe the officer should be fired, then I think the clear situation is you can't, you know, right now we're waiting. I've been reading for a week. The mayor is reading the Driving While Black report. Yeah. People are frustrated with the mayor. That's not about the mayor at all. It's about the police department. And so one of the leaders of this whole thing, I haven't spoken to him about this, but one of the leaders of this whole thing about community oversight and other things is Kyle Mothershead. Very active guy in the community. He's very pro that.
30 seconds.
He'll write, everything he writes, he says, how are we ever going to win when we have an unelected police chief? Now, I don't know what he means by that. But it's right that the people demand accountability from the people they put in office. And I'm not saying that makes them better people, but I don't like going and changing our charter in language like this when really what you're asking for is more direct accountability.
Which would come with an elected official like yourself down the road, perhaps.
For someone else, right, not me.
Happy Halloween.
All right,
we'll see you soon.
Okay.
We'll be back with a programming note right after this. Thank you.